A lot of people seem to be struggling with Heresy's new GM Psyops Battleground Cosmodrome, especially because it is double Nightfall drops and is brought Locust Eater, the new rocket assisted sidearm that everybody wants because it's void. Now, if you're out there in the LG world, I can only imagine how much you're dealing with, like struggles, but I got you. I've got a guide for you to make it as easy as you can make it be, give you all the tips and tricks for the boss room, and pretty much make sure you get it done in no time. I did a lot of runs on stream, helping a lot of people get their runs done, most in less than 20 minutes, some in about 15-16 minutes. And I truly believe with these strats, and even just with my tips, you'll be able to get it done. You and your fire team, and you and your friends will get it done, and you can be even more confident in LFG to get these drops, get these in-game materials, and most importantly, get the role of Locust Eater that you want. This is going to assume you know how the strike already goes, but I'm going to walk you through the strike anyway and give you a quick tip and trick regarding each area. Specifically going to focus on the boss encounter and every phase of the boss and what you want to make sure you and your fire team are doing to ensure that you're going to get the W every single time. This GM has a very high amount of ad density, so because of that, you have to make sure that you bring you a tether, specifically a Deadfall Night Stalker. It can be either traditional void or prismatic. Personally, I prefer prismatic just to take advantage of transcendence in this encounter, because a lot of the encounters are really high density as far as enemies, and you're going to be able to get a whole lot of transcendence energy as well. So you might as well take advantage of the super and take advantage of the transcendence so you can get a lot of ad clear and you can keep your fire team alive even better. To pair with that tether, we want to take advantage of a bunch of ad clearing supers. Drop down the tether and then ad clear your life wave with a super like a T-Crash and Chaos Reach, those two being some of the better choices. You can also follow it up with another tether instead. Having two tethers is also really good for crowd control. As far as weapons, you can run whatever you want. Tying into stuff like Void, if you're running Volatile Hunters, is fantastic. Taking advantage of Bolt Charge obviously is really good, and taking advantage of Arc Warlock is also really good. Obviously you want to use whatever you're most comfortable with, but it's also important to make sure you're running things that are going to be very high strength as far as doing a lot of damage to single targets, and also being able to destroy a lot of the targets that will be tethered, which will allow you to create a gameplay loop of tether, super, tether, super. As far as doing the opening, you want to stay with the payload and progress it as quickly as you can. Obviously you want to stop and take out the big brig as a team, tether it, use your supers on it, but as a team you should be able to move it together. You want to make sure you take advantage of taking out the enemies everywhere around the payload, and you want to stop it right here on screen. Doing it that way will cause the enemies to spawn in a easier route, so you can just kill a wave, they spawn, kill a wave, they spawn. If you continue progressing it past 85 or 86%, it will cause all the enemies to spawn at one time instead of over like a sequence of wave after wave. This is way easier because you can just constantly spam your supers. You can, stun all the champions and make that a lot easier on you and your fire team. Once you've killed all the waves, you're gonna have a couple waves of unstoppables and barriers. Once the wizard comes up, you are free to move up and just, slay out as quickly as you can. But just make sure that you do all of that as quickly as you can, because we all are trying to be efficient, and if you're doing this right, you will be efficient. A rule of thumb that I have in my runs is anytime you have a super and you see waves of enemies showing up, use that super. We are not taking these supers to orbit, as a lot of people like to joke. Don't take that super to orbit. Use that super as often as you can, because that super will generate orbs. That super will feed into the next player's super, which will allow the tether to stay up more often, which will allow the chaos, which will allow the Well of Radiant, whatever super you are using, to stay up more often. Obviously you're just going to push the payload, and if you haven't grab that heavy box, make sure you grab that heavy box. Moving to the next room, this is very important. You want to make sure you move to a section of the room that you can allow your players' backs to be against a wall where nothing is going to spawn. What I like to do is go into the room and go to the right. Nothing's going to be behind you. You can make sure that nothing's going to catch you off guard. You will have some enemies left and right. And if you need to get out of dodge real quickly, you can go back through the door really quickly. Going to the other side is a little bit more sketchy. If you are out of position, you are not anywhere you can get to like safely recover your health, you know, reconvene with the team, make sure everyone's ready to go. If you're a last guardian standing on the other side, it is very tough to get to a section where you can, like, you know, make sure nothing gets around you. Rule of thumb, again, like always, don't sit on those supers. Whenever you got them, use them. Also, machine guns are really good for this room, especially if you have the new Vault of Glass one. Make sure you just prioritize that. You have a heavy box you'll be able to pick up later on, but just prioritize that. Queenbreaker is a really good option here for one of your teammates to have because it has particle reconstruction for increased damage. It is also unstoppable fusion rifle, so you can also, you know, damage all of the enemies. It also has the blinding system where if you do the heavy charge, the big damage single fire shot, it'll stun unstoppables, then swap to the 3 burst, and then you can, you know, dump all of your ammo into the unstoppable and kill it really fast. A lot of really good choices. It's also very ammo efficient. If your teammates are all, you know, running heavy ammo finders, you should have no problem using heavy weapons like they are primary weapons. Again, every time you see waves of enemies, you should be dropping a tether on them, and then you should be supering them. Obviously, you want to make sure that you are in a situation where you are not going to put your team in a bad situation. Even in this situation where, like, you know, I died because I couldn't get back into the room real quickly, I got splash damage. You see that my teammate can instantly, like, you know, hide real quickly, get the res, and then we're good. This is why if I was on the other side of the room, this would be very difficult because the other person still has to deal with the guys around them, and I prefer to stand on this side of the room. You kind of know where all the enemies are going to be. They're going to come to you, you don't come to them. A rule of thumb as well for this room, so you don't get like overwhelmed really quickly, is that the waves of enemies spawn from the minors all the way up to the majors. So you go in the room, you have a couple waves of thrall, then you have some acolytes, then you have some acolytes with knights, and then you have acolytes, knights, wizards, and then you have acolytes, knights, wizards, and then the big wizards. This is very important because, you know, once a wave shows up, you only have so many more. You'll get unstoppable spawning right after the wave of wizards, so you want to make sure you prioritize, okay, we have wizards wave, once we kill this wave we have unstoppables next. It's also important to know that a lot of the enemies in the back of the room will stay back there, so you don't need to prioritize them unless they rush you or until you are done with all the champions and all the barriers. Knowing what's happening in the room is vital, and knowing what to expect and how to manipulate when those things are going to show up is very important. So this information might not seem like a lot, but in the thick of it, when you're fighting and you know, okay, I just killed a wave of wizards, I know what should be happening next. Unstoppables. If it isn't unstoppables because you've already killed a couple of waves of unstoppables, then you know it'll be anti-barriers. This is very important because I've seen a lot of teams not expect something and then get overwhelmed and then have 15 unstoppables rush them and team wipe them. This strike is actually pretty easy and pretty fun if you know what to expect and how to manipulate the spawns and how to team shot and just destroy and just deal with everything the moment it happens. Obviously, when you go into the middle section right at the beginning of the boss, it's important to burn him down. You can also play a little bit slow and hide back, but just make sure that obviously you don't get hit by the Captain America shield and that you don't get hit by his suppressor nades. The boss room can be scary, but once you know how everything works, this is very easy. Your hunter should always tether to that door that you just saw me do early, so when you get the rally, you can tether again. This is important because the first wave of enemies will always spawn left, and that means that they will all get tethered for about 30 seconds, and you can just destroy all the ads. The boss is actually really easy. The problem is the ads that will just destroy you because you didn't expect them. So by that point, you have 2 tethers down, 1 on the boss, so your teammates can start doing some damage to them. This is where the linears are really good. The one downside about that is occasionally you will have the loosened hive moths rush you this way. Very, very rare. I think I had it maybe 3 times in about 20 runs, and that was just me just not killing them, or not killing the actual enemy after I let them get tethered. Either way, you have all the enemies spawning left. If you want to make sure you know how to do this entire phase all the way through, enemies will spawn left, always off the first cycle, then enemies will spawn right, and then enemies will spawn left. That is not the case every single time. It will be dictated based off of the unstoppable spawn. So in a few minutes you'll see it. If the unstoppable spawns on the top little platform, the next wave of enemies in phase 2 will all spawn left again. Now if the unstoppable spawns on the pit area, or like where the boss spawns as well, then all the enemies will spawn right. This is only for the second phase. So when all of them spawn down below, you know, okay, the ogre is going to be up there, or bottom. So just to remember, if the unstoppable ogre spawns in this bottom area in the pit, then the next wave of enemies will all spawn out of the right side of the room. If he spawns on the top platform, on the top little stage, then the next wave of enemies for phase 2 will still all spawn left. This is very important because after you do the first Savathun, everybody gets overwhelmed. Knowing where all the enemies are makes it significantly faster to spawn camp, significantly easier to like destroy, and to move on to the next phase. Again, like I said, the final boss is actually really easy and really chill. It's all the enemies around him that becomes very overwhelming. The other thing obviously is the Savathuns. They are super brutal. You can do the strat where you jump up top and deal with all the enemies from a distance. Not a terrible strat, but if you're taking a friend through who's not super comfortable with the spear mechanic, or just platforming isn't their best thing, and you have a death, then that's just asking for, someone to die for the wrong reason. Another thing we like to do is we like to split up the room between left side and right side. The first cycle is just grabbing the spear and just clearing everything out. You shouldn't have really any problems if you've done the strat I've been doing, clearing out everything really quickly. The Savathun doesn't really bother us at all. Phase 2, you do the same exact thing. Also, you want to make sure you pop your supers on everything. You don't really use your supers on the boss. So you want to do it on everything else first, because they're the guys that will hurt you. Not really the boss, not really Savathun. It's all the additional adds. So obviously it spawned on the right side. We knew that was going to happen. And so we're going to take care of all the enemies, and then we start whittling him down. He doesn't have a lot of health. You want to make sure you don't get hit by the suppressors and don't get hit by the enemies around him. Another really interesting note is that as the health goes down, the amount of waves that spawns drops 1. So at the beginning of the fight, you'll have 3 waves of enemies that spawn during the section. On the second phase, 2. On the final set, 1. So it's very important to know 3, 2, 1 as the third of the health goes down. This is important because once you take all the ads, it's just you and the boss and his Captain America shields. I wanted to show this run because we still get a really decent time, and this is probably the worst I played in about the 18 hours of me doing runs and helps, and obviously this was me kind of tired already. So it's very important to know most of your runs probably will either go this way, or you won't get killed by a lot of the random stuff that happened to me. Obviously you want to never push him until the entire team is ready. If you're an LFG, this is also going to happen a lot, but it's always good to communicate with your team and make sure everyone is ready to push. Once you've pushed, you're going to have those waves of enemies. Obviously wherever the waves of enemies spawn, we're going to still mob them up real quickly. That's our priority. If the quicker you do that, the less Savathun is going to be a problem, because Savathun only becomes a problem when we have to deal with the 2 Savathuns and dealing with all the other enemies around. So we want to prop all of our supers, get rid of all the waves of enemies, and we're going to have to just wait this out. And then you're going to have one person go right, draw the aggro, one person go left, draw the aggro, and just have someone just be a flex, just move left and right. The reason I like to have one person keep the aggro of one of the Savathuns is because I think in this video as well, in this run, sometimes you will have people that are equally drawing aggro one of them, have all the aggro pulled to one person. So say for example, right side is keeping right side's aggro, left side keeps left side aggro, and left side moves to the right side. Meanwhile, right side's trying to go to the middle. That will cause Savathun to just both of them laser target you and then cook you. Staying split is always key. If one person dies, you're fine. You'll be able to go over there sooner or later and get the res. Even though this is a really consistent strat and speedful strat, this is also a really safe strat, because if something goes wrong, if someone's not super experienced in this fight, and someone is not really comfortable in this fight, and Savathun scares them, and or they've had multiple wipes in Savathun's boss room, then they just are, oh, I'll never get this done. Keep this team split left and right, and then you're good. Once you kill the amount of waves, you're done. You already killed the 2 waves, and then you just gotta focus fire on taking down the Savathun. As long as the right side keeps their aggro, then by the time the left side is done, then the right ones also should be done. Take out the 2 Savathuns, and then you move on to the final section, which means we're gonna go left this time, because obviously we already killed waves right twice. That means we're gonna have to kill left now, because remember, we saw the ogre, we saw where it told us it was going to be. So obviously now that we had to do all that, we go left and right and left. So now we're going to focus fire all of them, and then we're going to drop that tether and make sure we take out all the ads first. Once we kill this wave, it's really just us and the boss, and then it's smooth sailing to the end. This boss is actually really fun. A lot of people are scared with them, but even with the terrible run I used, which is why I wanted to make this the one in the video, you are in and out of here in less than 20 minutes. And before you know it, you got the Cosmodrome Battlegrounds, these scary Cosmodrome Battlegrounds with Savathun's clones completed. There's a lot you can clean up. There was some runs I did earlier around 15 minutes, but even in a technically bad run, or a scuffed run as some people say, this is a very consistent strat that even you can take into LFG and do no problem. Hopefully this helps you. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. Good luck on getting Lotus Eater, and I will see you in the next video.